So that's actually going to be my next question. So I know that we have to speak in a lot of generalities, but generally speaking, when does somebody who has very healthy eyes, when can they expect for their eyes to slowly going out of vision, I guess? I don't know.
It is such sadness that we're talking about today, Paul. Mid-40s. And isn't it funny how like there's such variations in humans and still yet everybody's eyes start to fade around the same time. And they fade regardless of whether you're a book reader and read books all day, every day, your whole life, or a fisherman who's always looking really, really far away and never looking up close. There's variations there, and mid-40s is still maybe a pretty long time span, but that's typically when people start needing reading glasses. Your answer for cataracts, typically for reading glasses is mid-40s, and then cataracts are, I would say, mid-60s to late 60s. Of course, there's variations to that, right? Smokers, like we talked about, get cataracts earlier. Smokers get macular degeneration earlier, and cataracts earlier. People who take certain medications, like steroids, get a certain type of cataract. Diabetics get cataracts earlier than average. And so there's things that can sway you. And there's some patients who are 92 and don't really have cataracts, or maybe I should say their cataracts don't really bother their vision that much. And then some people need them out at the age of 65. It's funny.
So you mentioned that, it's around the age of mid-40s for most people. Not everybody, but for most people, if we're grading on a bell curve.
Yeah.
What is it that's actually causing the vision to change? Is it just the usage of the muscles and everything else, and its inability to focus as well anymore, or?
It's less of a lens opacity like in cataracts, and it's more of a muscle. And if you want, it's really kind of interesting. Like, say the lens is the shape of a football when it's at rest, right? And that football is inside a bag that's being pulled tight on either end, right? So if you think about it, when I'm looking at something off in the distance, my lens is a football shape, and it's being pulled on the ends to kind of flatten it by these muscles or these fibers. And then say I go to look at something up close. Those fibers at the end relax, and it allows the football to come in and be much more spherical, right? And that changes the thickness of the lens, right? It goes from relatively skinny in that football to now squished up to kind of like a basketball. That increases the thickness or the depth of the lens, which changes the focal length, right? And so that's how, in your camera analogy,
Interesting.
Now it's looking at something up close. That's how it changes, right? Like the eye isn't digital, right? Something physically has to move that lens. And when a lens wants to change its focal length, it has to change the center thickness of that lens, right? So if you're designing the human body, how do you do that? Maybe you make the lens relatively moldable, and you put it in a bag, and then just squish and move the bag around with fibers. And those fibers are attached on the other end to a muscle. And so there's two things that change when someone needs reading glasses. One, that muscle that moves those fibers in and out starts to fade. And two, that lens that was very moldable and movable and squishable when you're 2 or when you're 8 now no longer becomes super moldable. And so, you can push that lens in so you can increase the lens thickness and increase the focal length or decrease the focal length. But it's harder, it's harder. And then when you get in your 50s, it's even harder, literally harder. Now the lens is literally harder. And even if you put a decent amount of pressure on that, it doesn't change as much. It's interesting. And the camera analogy is very apt, I think, in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
It helps. You have a lot of cameras here, and I like I like photography, and I think it helps me as an eye doctor knowing a little bit about cameras and focal lengths and apertures. Knowing photography makes the profession a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Hey folks, connecting with your benefits is our primary mission, and the SITREP is providing more options than ever.
Subscribe to our free email newsletter, subscribe to our audio podcast channel, or subscribe to our content on YouTube.
For details and links, check out the description below.